everybody. This is Margaret, and this is the Boleros podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about primarily knitting, but also inspiration from the world of fashion, art, classical music, literature, and other drippings from the brain pan. So if this is something that floats your boat, feel free to grab a cup of something cozy, refreshing, and do subscribe to help me make more videos such as this. So in today's episode, a recap of Paris. I went to Paris last week for a 4-day rendezvous. It was just fantastic. And I want to share some of the things that inspired me, especially in terms of knits and fashion. And so that will be featured on today's episode. I also have not one, not two, but three finished objects to share with you. A new pattern design that is now available. I'll tell you all about that, inspired, of course, by Paris, of course. And my experience this past weekend at the New Jersey Wool Walk. And let's get started. I also have some Stashquisitions I'm going to share. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so just some general housekeeping. On Mondays at noon, I do, except when I was away, but I go on Instagram live at noon on the Boleros page. I have had my Margaret account on Instagram and my Boleros, and kind of mixing my classical piano playing and then mixing the knitting, and it all became like a mishmash. But as of a few weeks ago, I said, okay, time to parse it out. And so now the knitting content is on Boleros and the piano content on Margaret. So if you've subscribed to both and enjoy both, thank you. But if you're looking for more knitting, then you can find it on Boleros. And that's where I do my Instagram live on Mondays, and just kind of catching up. And it's always fun to chat with whoever joins in and talk about the things that inspire us. The last episode, we actually got on a huge tangent about perfume, and it was such an interesting conversation. So anyway, knitting is a world, isn't it, of inspiration. And my trip to Paris was about taking in inspiration. And I think we all owe that to ourselves from time to time. In The Artist's Way, fantastic book that so many creators, I'm sure many of you have read it, but The Artist's Way does talk about taking yourself on an artist date. And a lot of times as creators, as mothers, as just women with careers, with families, with art, and whatever is the focus of your life, we can often expend energy all the time. And it's so important to inhale and to exhale. So Paris was for me a huge inhale, to go and to just look and to feel and to experience and to taste and to listen and to smell and engage the senses and replenish the battery. And if any of you have that opportunity to just take yourself away for even a day, it could be just a different location. It's amazing what a change of environment does for us, right? So today's broadcast is called A Banquet of the Senses. It's when we stop. You could even not have to leave our home or wherever we are. We could just stop and feel and experience all the beauty around us that we can with our 5 senses and beyond. Because I do think we have other senses, like perception, that has nothing to do with the other 5. It's a heart perception, I do think. And so there's so much to experience in this state. And to set the tone for today's broadcast, this being today, May 7th, Tchaikovsky, the great composer, Tchaikovsky's birthday, and another great composer, Johannes Brahms. They both share the same birthday, Tchaikovsky being 7 years younger than Brahms, two of the great, great, great composers in all history. I have a special connection with Tchaikovsky. It's the first music that I heard that made me weep as a child, just because it was so beautiful. I couldn't believe that such music can exist. And I have always felt that Tchaikovsky, in so many different moments, pivotal moments of my life, especially as a young musician, Tchaikovsky was there with me, almost like watching me. It was a crazy connection. And on May 7th, I just like to share you this story. That was a profound day for me in 1990. I was a young student. I was searching for answers, how to excel in my piano playing, which at that point was cut short because I had developed such terrible tendonitis that I essentially could not play. And it was getting to be a really like dire time because it was like do or die. I couldn't afford to keep waiting for solutions and answers, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't find them through the conventional routes because I tried so many different things and nothing worked. So imagine wanting to be a pianist, but essentially, I got to a point where I couldn't even play, Twinkle Twinkle without pain in my forearms. It was so bad. On May 7th, 1990, something quite extraordinary happened. Somebody handed me a ticket to go to Carnegie Recital Hall. There's the main hall, and then there's a smaller recital hall. And this concert was in the smaller recital hall. And I didn't think anything much of it. I just went and I took a seat in the balcony. And there was a pianist performing that night whose name I wasn't familiar with. But, I just thought, okay, you know what? I got this ticket, I'll go. And I'll, I didn't have any expectation. And the whole concert was a birthday concert for Brahms and Tchaikovsky. So the pianist programmed only the music of those two composers. I'm sitting in the balcony, and the pianist comes out, sits down, and plays the first note. It was of Brahms' Intermezzo, Opus 119, an absolutely beautiful piece that starts with like this gorgeous cascade of a B minor chord. Anyway, I'm sitting up there, and suddenly those three notes wafted up to my ear. It sounded like diamonds, bright, sparkling diamonds of tone that was so intoxicatingly beautiful. The tone itself just got me. And I said, what is this? It was almost like a magical alchemy of tone and sound that the pianist was producing. The piano stopped sounding like a piano and started to sound like an orchestra. It started to sound like a singer, like a Maria Callas or a bel canto, or a gorgeous tenor, Enrico Caruso. I mean, it was just so rich and so resonant and like honey. It was like dripping dark chocolate, kind of gorgeous tone. And I was hypnotized the entire concert. I never heard piano playing like this. I went backstage. I met the pianist, and he became my mentor, my teacher for the next at least 12 years of my life. And I had to go back to basics with him. He gave me two choices. He said, Margaret, you can either take the cosmetic route where I could kind of fix your playing, and it'll never be really set. It'll never really be solid in the sense that you'll have the answers, but it'll get the job done and you'll be able to play. It's kind of putting a Band-Aid on the problem. He said, or you could take door number 2. Door number 2 would be to start from scratch. Pretend you're starting piano lessons from the very beginning. And if you trust me, we'll be able to get you back on track, but it might be a long process. I said, hello. Because for me, my clock is always ticking. And he said, well, it could be 2 years. 2 years. And so at that point in my life, I was already 19. And I thought, 2 years? Well, that'll mean that I won't be ready to play until like 21, 22. At that point, it's kind of like the door is closing for a career, I thought in that time. Anyway, so I thought about it, went home, really thought, like, what do I want to do here? But I knew there was no putting a Band-Aid on the problem, that I really wanted to have those tools. And so I said, okay, let's do it. Let's start from scratch. He was very patient with me. And it was a miraculous process of going not only to, it wasn't just technical, it was, so far beyond. It was the connection with sound, the connection with how we are tone, right? Like how everything in our body has a frequency, a vibration. And when we connect to it, it's almost like the music comes out of us. It's really an inner process, just made external. And that was the spiritual, physical training that I was so blessed to receive. After that, I was able to give my debut in Carnegie Hall, and I cried for hours upon hours upon hours at home after that concert, because it was almost like it was so hard to get to that point, and there was such a struggle. And sometimes I asked, my prayers, I said, Lord, why did you give me this desire and talent for music and this love for it? It was the only thing I wanted to do since I was very young. Like, there was no other option in my heart. And I said, but why to give the gift and then to take it away, right? Because I really had this physical situation. And I knew it was for a reason. And so I wanted to give pianists and students who might have been experiencing the same thing the way out that worked for me. And so I put this training that I got, I kind of distilled it, I refreshed it, and I put it together in a course, which I teach to people around the world through my online course. So it was such a blessing. May 7th is so special to me, and I'd like to share this piece of music by Tchaikovsky. It's from his set of pieces called The Seasons, and it's beautiful. These are short pieces, and they take us from January through all the months into December, and he really does have a beautiful way to characterize each special month. So I hope you enjoy this musical selection. So Tchaikovsky wrote that music is an incomparably more powerful means and a subtler language for expressing the 1,000 different moments of the soul's moods. And okay, like as we launch into the knitting content, just reflecting on the banquet for the senses again, the incomparably countless number of moods and nuances and feelings that we can have and hold. So among those many nuances of inspiration that I had in Paris, well, one of them was, of course, the fashion. Paris is known as a fashion center, and it did not disappoint. Like, the people watching in its own was just absolutely fascinating. And so I am like wearing what I consider to be a Parisian look based on what I saw. Okay, and I'm just sharing that with you because, okay, so the first day we arrived in the morning, my husband Mark, who, as I mentioned early on, he used to work for Chanel. He was working for formulation of the makeup colors. And so he would often go to Paris on business trips, and he would be in the Chanel headquarters. Now, in those days, we had young children. I had just started a music school, and I wasn't able to accompany him on these trips. And that was hard. And yeah, anyway, but so he wanted to show me, oh, here's where I used to go. Here's the restaurant. Here's the Rue Cambon and all this stuff. So among the first stops was that area. And of course, he was surprised because it had built up. Like, there are so many more Chanel stores and a bigger headquarters, and it's been years since he saw it. So he was amazed by that. I'm, of course, amazed by what's in the windows. And I'm also amazed because it was early in the morning, and like the shops were completely filled with people buying handbags, sunglasses, purses, and shoes. It was really beyond. It was super beyond. It was probably one of the more fascinating things for me was to go and see the steps, which I have some video here. These were the famed staircase where Coco Chanel would watch the fashion show from. So that just was breathtaking. Afterwards, Mark and I, my husband, we stopped at a place that he was talking about. He's like, I gotta take you to Flot. It was called Flot, Flottes. And he's like, that's where we used to hang out. It's like the best, blah, blah, blah. So literally it was next door to the Chanel headquarters. And so we went there just for a little breakfast situation. And so there was this Parisian woman. She was so obviously like expressing the whole Parisian vibe. And she was, I don't know, she was the proprietor there, or maybe the wife of the proprietor, I don't know, but she was taking all the calls and everything. But the way she looked, if there was one impression, that was it. Like, she had the look. And let me just tell you about this woman, because sometimes you see somebody and they just leave such an indelible impression. She was the one for me. So she had this like short haircut, like Liza Minnelli, dark hair. It was just so cute. And she was wearing this hot pink blazer, some like long flowy skirt. I don't know what was underneath the blazer, but over the blazer, she had this massive shawl. I don't think it was a hand knit, but it was just huge. It was like a schlanket. She's wearing it, and it's like wrapped and it's cascading. And I was like, oh my gosh, wow. She's so fabulous. And then with the short haircut, she had like these big earrings on. So this is my homage to her. So F on. my black blazer, just like a simple black blazer. I have a big earring, which I got at the Paris flea market. Okay, that was like, for me, the highlight, one of the highlights. There is no one thing, but I love the Paris flea market. I'm going to tell you about that on another episode because there's just too much content. This is just scratching the surface. If you're interested in Paris content, just get ready because there's going to be a lot of installments of this. Okay, and for the scarf portion of the look, the Parisian look, I have on my Stephen West slumber shawl, which I made this so many years ago. I completely forgot even what colors I used, but I think it was hedgehog fibers, and just has this wonderful like little eyelet pattern. What I liked about this pattern was it went quite quickly because it was on an Aran weight. So anyway, if you're interested, if this is all my like personal brand of crazy, like this is what I do. This is like the dripping from the brain pan is like, how can I like channel this look? Okay. If you're into this, then grab a blazer. If you have a big shawl, I'm sure many of you guys have knit up big time shawls. They are super chic, and yeah, big earring, and like it doesn't even matter what you have underneath that. It's like I realize it's all about the accessories. So there you go. Speaking of fashion, there were two stores that I just was browsing at, and I'll tell you, like they were absolutely overwhelming, to say the least. And it was mostly, forget about what was in them. It was more the building itself. Galeries Lafayette and another store named Printemps, which was next to it. And it was unbelievable. I insert some footage here, just the opulence of these buildings, the stained glass, it just was incredible. I had been at Galeries Lafayette before, but seeing it again, it just never fails to amaze. Just the architecture, just the detail in these beautiful, beautiful buildings. So anyway, it was really quite something. So in homage, like in preparation for my Parisian trip, which I didn't have too much time to prepare, like it kind of came out of the blue. And so I only had maybe like 2-3 weeks. And it was also coming in tandem with the New Jersey Wool Walk, and I was collaborating with a local yarn store that's close to me called Wool and Grace in Summit, New Jersey. And so I had in my mind a pattern that I wanted to make for the Wool Walk and also for Paris. So let me just undo this so I can show you the Coco Bolero. Yes, that is the Coco Bolero. By the way, if you're interested in like how I did that shawl, this is what it is. This is how it looks. So I think it was 3 colors, even though it looks 2. Yeah, it was like a bluish, and then it goes into like a little more peachy. I really had a fun time knitting this. But one way that I've kind of been like trying to figure this out, like if you want to do the cascade drape, just put the triangle in front, and I would maybe tie the ends underneath so that they kind of stay out of your way, and just kind of like a bandana situation, just like zhuzh this up. You want to show like the contrast, and voila, you have yourself a scarf blanket situation. Okay, so Coco Bolero, that I had a couple of things in mind when I was making that pattern, and one of the things was, if you've been watching these podcasts, you have heard about the dress that I started 20+ plus years ago that I was looking to bring back because I found it in pieces and I was like, I should finish this already. And it was in a, like, it looked like a tweed. It was like in a very easy to make slip stitch pattern. I was curious, like, what if I take that slip stitch and enlarge it with a bulk yarn? What would that work up as? And so I started experimenting and I really liked the effect. It looks like crochet, but it's not. It's the simplest slip stitch. It's like you're knitting 3 stitches and then you're just slipping 1. That's it. And you do it in 2 colors. It's so much fun to play around with your color choices. And so the Coco Bolero, this is it. It is a very easy to make garment, like super easy. It takes, I use Loopy Mango for the small size. This is my first iteration of it. It took 3 balls of each color. Actually, you could probably get away with 2 balls of the color B, but just to be safe, you know, but you know, then again, you can always buy more if you need, but I think 2 balls for color B should be sufficient. But for the color A, you need more because there is this like wonderful little crochet, double crochet edge to give it that final look. A couple of things that I had in mind for this was kind of channeling the whole Chanel, excuse the pun, channel, get it? Anyway, I wanted to keep it very tailored. I wanted to keep a nice shoulder. And there is a little technique. It's very simple. Anyone can do it. I'm not going to tell you what you do, but you get the look of a shoulder pad without a shoulder pad. So you've got that little tailored thing. It's cute. It's cropped. Of course, you can make it longer if you want. Yeah, there's like, it's essentially done. You start at the back and you work your way up, and then you hold the center and left shoulder stitches. You continue knitting the right front, then you go back, you knit the left front, you just see 1 short seam on the side, and then you work your sleeves. It's that simple. It's done on a 17 needle. For the sleeves, I did it on a 19. And why did I do it on a 19? Because I wanted it to go faster. That's the honest reason. I don't like doing sleeves. I don't know if I'm alone. I'm not alone in this. I know many people call it Sleeve Island. And I just, in bulky weight yarn, sleeves are really not anything that I want to linger on. And so I want to speed the process. And so I did it on 19. Guess what? I like the look because it's a little bit exaggerated on the sleeve, but it's subtle, so you can't really tell. I'm really proud of this jacket because it came out exactly the way I wanted. It really did. The shaping here, easy, and it just like gives the shape. I like the crocheted edge. That seems to be, someone asked me on Saturday at the New Jersey Wool where I was debuting the pattern, like, is this your signature thing with the crochet trim? I don't know, maybe it is. I think it's just easy and it finishes off the garment. This one I made, so this is the size extra small, and this one is the size medium. And so because I've got a mannequin, which is in a smaller size, I was able, you see how these 2 front pieces on, when you make it true to your size, it doesn't close, and that's meant to be like this because it's a Bolero. But if you make a larger size, then obviously you have more width here and you can button it if you choose to. I got these cute buttons in Paris at the flea market. That's another story. And so I couldn't wait to just like throw them on the garment and see what happens. So anyway, the Coco Bolero is available now for download, and it has over 6 video tutorials where I filmed it, and I'm doing it with you guys. And so like any questions are resolved in those videos. And actually, it's not even that you need those, but I just wanted to make sure that for beginner knitters that might have some questions, that they felt supported and confident with the tools they need to make this garment. So yeah, that's the Coco Bolero, and I hope you guys like it. What do you think? Do you think? A lot of people say, oh, that's so Chanel, and I consider that a great compliment, because you know, I first started knitting, and the first project I ever did was in 1995. Again, it was like a tiny little Coco Chanel-ish inspired jacket, and that was like the reason I got into knitting. So it's kind of come full circle that my first real pattern is a Coco Chanel inspired knit jacket. So I hope you like it. Now the next two colors that I'll be knitting are these two. Talk about typical. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Like, it's like a yarn explosion here. Yeah, in black and white. I picked these up at Wool and Grace on Saturday, and it was just so much fun helping so many of you. Thanking you for the ladies that came out and were so excited to make the Coco Bolero, and it was so much fun picking out colors with you guys. So I saw Deidre, she came out, she picked out some gorgeous pinks for her Bolero. There's Carol, who picked out like this fantastic like navies, and Brussels sprouts to go, like a combo that I think I'll be making, including the yellow again in a new iteration with the Tweedy. So this is Loopy Mango, the Merino #5. And there are a few skeins that they do a couple colors that have this Tweedy look. And so anyway, they have like little speckles in them of different colors. So that was really fun to see hers. It was like one of those, like black with those speckles, and then yellow. It was fantastic. So, okay, black and white is the next to go up on the needles. All right, so FOs are the completed 2 Coco Boleros. Now this one I knit in 2 days. Yeah, 2 days. Granted, it was a lot of knitting. Like the second day was like, you know, just sitting in a chair for 12 hours. You know who I've been watching a lot, like when I was doing this one? Have you guys seen Rajiv Surendra? Do you know who he is? I'm gonna link his YouTube. I love him.
A few months ago, I went to Paris with a couple of friends. We rented an apartment, and we spent almost every day outside painting. But in the evenings, after dinner, we would go back to the apartment, we would light candles, and we started reading aloud to each other. Jack was reading a book about the history of coffee, so he read from that book. Laura was reading a book about the secret life of trees, and I was reading Leo Tolstoy's short stories. So that's what I read from. It was so special that we started getting excited about finishing dinner and rushing home so that we could get in a bit of reading before we went to bed. And it left me with a reminder of how special it is to spend quality time with the people that you love by actually doing something with them. Reading aloud to your loved ones, reading aloud to people you care about is a classic way of showing someone that you care about them or that you love them. It's also very, very romantic.
I love him so much. I love him. He's one of these Renaissance guys, and he does everything. And his apartment in New York City is incredible. His talent, but most importantly is like his approach to living is so joyous, refined. He does segments on cooking. He does segments on flower arranging. he does segments on like a cast iron pan, how to season it, how to polish your silver, why to use silver in the first place, like silver cutlery. So of course we're in Paris and I'm all like inspired by these videos. And I say to Mark in the flea market, I'm like, let's look for real silver cutlery. He's like, what? They didn't have it. It was very hard to find real silver cutlery. But Rajiv talks about just, it's a form of mindfulness. It's a form of gratitude. Like, I love what he says about ironing, because he has even a video about how to iron a shirt. Like, it's so funny that these are things that people used to just know how to do, ironing, but sometimes it's easy not to, like, you could go through modern living without even ironing anything. And then, so his rebuttal to those that ask him, like, why, I don't have time to iron. Like, why should I iron when I could just send it out to the dry cleaners or something? His answer to that is, well, it is a gift, you know, to be able to iron something with your own two hands and to have that time to think and be alone with your thoughts is so precious. And I was like, yeah, good, I love this guy. All right, so Rajiv Surendra helped me get through the long day of knitting the Bolero. So I thank him. I love him. All right, I said that already a million times. Do you want to see my next finished object? I finally finished my Gumdrop Sweater. Yay! This is the knit collage. Serendipity yarn, I think it is. This is a special collab with Ken Yarn, and oh wow, this is so fun. Maya finished hers like ages ago, my daughter, and she was always like, when are you finally going to finish yours? And guess what? Paris was the incentive to finish it. I was knitting to the very, very last hour before leaving for the airport. I was like, I just got to finish these sleeves. I was going to make long sleeves. There's a long and short sleeve version, but I really liked the way the sleeves hit. Not to mention I was on a time deadline, but I did like the short sleeve version. My bind off, like I told you guys, the saga of having to, you know, like too tight of a bind off. I think it's still a little too tight, but I could still fit it, so whatever. And this is it. I love it. It's so cute. It's just so much fun. I don't even know if I have it on the right size, but I mean like the right side, but you see what I mean? Like these sleeves are a little poofy and I love that. And it's just scrumptious. This is a scrumptious piece. I have to move this out of the way now because it's disturbing. The two colors, like that's too much against this. Too much. Oh, okay, that's better. Can't have competition. All right, so fantastic pattern, easy to knit, love the yarn. I have a lot left over. I might make a second, I think, if I have enough. What can I say? I love it. Okay, now I want to show you my work in progress, which I started this week. Okay, so I don't know why this happens to me. Like I have an idea of, you know, things I'm gonna do, and then something like drops on the, you know, on the computer or on Instagram or whatever, or like I see something in a book and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to like go down that rabbit hole. So this happened to me this week. I don't know why, but I seem to be getting a lot of advertisements from this department store in New York called Bergdorf Goodman's, which is like really nice stuff. And there was a sweater, like a summer sweater that came up on my feed, and I saw it and I was like, I love that sweater. I think it was Bruno, I don't know, is it Cucinelli? I don't know how to say his last name, but in any case, it was gorgeous. I'll try to put a picture here. And the price tag was very high, like $2,000 something. I was like, no, no. Anyway, but I understand why it is. Like, it's not that. It's just that, that's beyond my point of comfort. No. Anyway, I started going down the rabbit hole of thinking, how can I knit a mesh? And I know mesh is, quite, you can find a lot of stuff about how to make a mesh in crochet, but not knitting. And I was interested in getting a square look, like a square meshy look for this summer top sweater. I'm like so into the mesh for summer. I was thinking summer tops. It was on my mind, like what kind of summer top, because I don't usually knit summer tops that much, but the mesh thing really captured my imagination. I said, mesh is it for summer. So long story short, let me show you. I started swatching, I started playing, I finally found some information about a technique that produces a square mesh effect. There's really not much out there about it. I was scouring the internet for hours trying to get more help and instruction on the technique, but I couldn't find very much. So I kind of had to figure it out myself using just some pictures and some rudimentary instruction. But I think I finally got it. So I am using a worsted weight cotton for this. And I'm using also, you guys remember, thanks to Peg, the sequin yarn. Okay, so the sequin yarn made it out for this. Thanks, Peg, for the inspo. And so here's what I got so far. Okay, here it is. Oh, there goes the thing. So a little mesh situation. What do you think? This is something called fillet lace. Fillet, like fish fillet lace. And once you get the hang of it, it's not hard, but until I figured it out, it was like an obsession of my entire day. I am this might be really oversized, and I don't care, because I think with the mesh, it is okay to be oversized. I started off with a little ribbing. My idea is to continue with this and do a nice drop sleeve. And then I don't know how I'm going to do the edging. I'm just going to see where it takes me. But what do you think, guys, for summer? Would you be into making a little mesh top? Of course, you wear like a camisole underneath, or a tank, or a bandeau kind of thing, a bra. So good. Or like my niece says, a bra. I don't know. She's so funny. She goes, she's like 9, and she goes, last summer, she goes, I want a bra. I don't know why she said bra. Anyway. Okay. This past Sunday, I decided to take a road trip on my own to South Jersey to a store called Grace and Purl. I'm sorry, I always confuse Summit Wool and Grace and Purl, which is in Avon by the Sea in New Jersey. I always confuse the two. But in any case, I made it out, and I was excited because Chelsea Yarns was there, and also Macy was there, Little Miss Knits, and I got a chance to meet her for the first time and say hello to Christina, and it was just fantastic. It's a beautiful store. They have really so many different brands, including knit collage, which I was surprised. It's not common to find knit collage in stores. And of course, I couldn't help myself but pick up some of Christina's yarns. And so this is what I got. Look at this. I mean, isn't this gorgeous? Oh, this part here. Wildflower. It's her Wildflower bass, and it's a duet. So there's two different basses in this one skein. There's Cobblestone, which is this nubby boucle, and then there's also the mohair. And so there's like 438 yards, and isn't that beautiful? And so, yeah, just, I don't know what I'll make with it, but I then also got this yarn, which is it's called Peaches and Cream, and this is, yeah, super wash merino 80-10-10 cashmere and nylon. Yeah, so I just thought the two together would be really nice for something, maybe even a shawl, actually, or maybe another summer top or something of that nature. Anyway, isn't that nice? So I was super, super excited. Okay. This has been going a little bit long, but I just want to leave with a little good things segment. And again, the Paris drippings from the brain pan and all of the footage, I'm going to be loading that up for weeks to come, but I just want to show you or share with you two particularly wonderful places where we visited. Number one was, I spoke about it before, it was the Paris flea market. I just was blown away at the number of vendors. It was a rainy Saturday morning when we got there, and it was just huge. I mean, everything you could imagine. Booths with furniture, booths with jewelry, booths with, old magazines and newspapers and lace and sheets for beds, like everything. And so there were a few shopkeepers that we befriended and had like such lovely conversations with and spent so much time. We were looking for a coffee grinder, an old-fashioned coffee grinder, because I broke the last one we had. When a black bead fell off my daughter's little purse and landed in the kitchen on the floor. I thought it was a coffee bean, and I inserted it into this really fancy Smeg coffee grinder we had, and I turned it on not knowing, and suddenly I hear and that just was the end of it. And so since then we have not had a coffee grinder, and it's been a year. And so we got one of those hand ground ones, but it was like, if I have footage, I'll insert it here. It was like so many from like 100 years ago to choose from. So we haven't tried it yet, but I'll give you a full report. It was really fun. I got this ring from another shopkeeper. She told me it was from 1920s. I don't think it's like all gold. I think it's like gold plated, but I like it a lot. Like there's just something about having, well, something from a trip that is so inspiring to you, like so you look and you remember, but also just something with a piece of history to it. And I like all the folds, and I like the bigness of it, and I like the fact that it fit my fingers, which it's really hard for me to find rings that fit my fingers because everything is usually too big for my fingers. So this fit, and I just love it. So got that. And then there was another booth. There were two fellows. They couldn't be more wonderful. All I have to say, all the people in Paris, whether we're asking for directions or, trying to get somewhere in a cab or ordering food, waiters and things, they couldn't be more lovely. They couldn't be kinder, sweeter, more helpful, more polite. Like it was such an incredible kindness down the board. I was so overwhelmed by how lovely all the Parisians were. I mean, it was just something very special. I remember when I went over 20 years ago, like there was the feeling that you had to at least try to speak French, like with ordering food, or, you know, you'd at least have to try in order to get a response. But this was not that way at all. It was so, so lovely. Now, I've had a bunch of years of French in high school, and I magically thought that I would arrive in Paris and like all that information would somehow be re-downloaded in my brain. It was not. So next time I have to really prepare. That's all I have to say. So we go into this one shop where they had a lot of vintage clothing and accessories, and I saw a belt and it caught my eye. It was probably from the 80s. I don't have it here, but it was just so cool. So I kept sifting through, and I mean, there was so much amazing stuff. There was, you know, like the shoe that got away. There was a pump, like it was black and white with this cutout. It was so gorgeous. It was so unbelievable. It was Karl Lagerfeld. And then they went on to explain to me, and I do remember after they told me this, I do remember they said that there was a time around 1990-ish where Karl was in charge of 3 fashion houses at the same time: Fendi, Chanel, and his own label. And this was his own label from that time. Those shoes were probably the hottest shoes I've ever seen. Of course, they were like 5 sizes too big for me, but like they left another indelible impression because of the design. It was just an absolutely perfect design. And I wish I took pictures, but I didn't. This was something else that I got, and it was, you know, you guys know me by now. I love anything late 60s or 60s into 70s. 70s, not as much as 60s, but they said this is probably late 60s. Handbag. And this is made by Lanvin, and I wanted a little, you know, something. And so, yeah, this just really just spoke to me because it seems so classic and elegant, and it fit things, and you know, it had nice little details. I like the canvas, and the embroidery has like this little lock on it with a key that says Amex for some reason. I don't know, but leather straps. I think it's so sweet. I really do like it. It wasn't really like off the charts expensive, but I like that it's made in France. And yeah, so that was my little splurge. I didn't get much else except a beautiful perfume, which I spoke about on the Mondays with Margaret, and that was a historical perfume, a remake of a perfume that George Sand, the great writer and lover of Frédéric Chopin in the 1800s, a scent that she created and wore. So yeah, that was so special. And last but not least, we can't close the podcast without talking about food. Breakfast place that was just so simple and unassuming, but absolutely delicious, was a place called Basilicus, and there were only a couple tables inside. It was like you kind of like have to order and then, you know, just like bring it to the table. It wasn't like waiter or service. It wasn't a restaurant, but it was a boulangerie, and it was. This is where I discovered that I could probably live on brioche for the rest of my life. Brioche. And this particular brioche was brioche with vanilla cream. I do have pictures. Oh yes, I do have pictures. This is where I left my heart, was with this brioche vanilla cream thing. I could barely sleep at night thinking about breakfast the next morning after that first encounter. I'm serious. It was everything. I've already started looking for recipes. Like, why do I need to eat brioche at home, like, and make it? Like, do I really need to do this to myself? Like, Margaret. But yes, the answer is yes. Do you guys know anything about about brioche making because I was looking at those like little pans and stuff like that. But theirs was square. It wasn't like in this brioche pan. I know babka really well because I'm Polish, and my mom makes absolutely wonderful babka, especially for Christmas and for Easter. But this brioche was absolutely like a pillow of decadent delight. That's all I have to say. So if you plan on being in Paris, and that area was kind of by the opera, I don't know which particular, section it is, but look it up. It's called Basilicus, and it does not disappoint. All right. And so with that, Brioche Dreams, remember that show? What was that show from the 80s? Caviar Dreams. Robin, what's his name? It'll come back to me. Anyway, Brioche Dreams and Caviar Wishes and Brioche Dreams. I say, adieu. No, what is it? Au revoir. Au revoir. Have a fantastic week. Join me on Monday on Instagram, Mondays with Margaret. And yeah, I'll see you really soon. Bye.